Hey everybody, how's it going? Delrith here, bringing you a new format, a rapid fire preview. You get it? You get what I did there? Anyway, this time for the game TemTem, the online monster battling pseudo MMO sort of thing. Now, let me set one thing straight. This is an early access game. The idea behind me doing these rapid fire previews is to be able to cover and review games in early access to basically give you an idea of whether or not it's worth your money now before the game fully launches. There's always been this problem of doing an actual review on a game before it fully comes out being unfair to the developers, and I totally understand that. But hopefully with this new format, I can give you an idea on if certain titles are worth your money to invest in, and so let's get on to TemTem. For anyone who doesn't know what TemTem is, it's, well, how do I put this? A very, 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 very close imitation. I think the word I want to use is imitation to Pokemon, an alternative even, where you, a trainer, run around and throw prison devices at magical animals to enslave them into doing your bidding in spontaneous fight clubs with random people in the world. Honestly, when people came to me and spammed my chat, live on Twitch all the time, where I'm streaming constantly with, "Hey Dale, check out TemTem, it's basically another Pokemon," I was pretty skeptical. I've played my fair share of Pokemon clones, a lot of them awful, so I came into this with pretty low expectations. And honestly, this game is everything except a disappointment to me, and I genuinely enjoyed playing through all the content Early Access has to offer, so let's just jump into what TemTem is. Graphically, TemTem has a rather unique art style. I don't know whether or not I'd refer to it as a cel-shaded style, but it's definitely interesting, and I really enjoy the general aesthetic that the game has to offer. Everything is just bright and vibrant, and the environments all look drastically different. I can tell that the developers working on the game are making sure to keep the zones as distinct as each other from possible. TemTems as well are all uniquely designed, with each one looking different even from other TemTems of the same type, and I went through the whole Temtemopedia or whatever the hell it's called and really couldn't find two things that are currently in the game that look similar. I mean, of course, the evolved forms of some of the Tems clearly draw inspiration from their bases, but that's to be expected, and the majority of them are cool enough looking that there's no room to complain. Oh, baby! He evolved, cool. So now he's upgraded into whatever that is. A lot of them are really neat and a ton of them are adorable, with each one obviously having a theme in the designer's head when they were created. There aren't a lot of TemTems currently implemented. I think there's supposed to be like 161 in total, but maybe only like 80 are currently actually seeable in the game. So the variety at times when you're encountering wild TemTem will seem very repetitive, but I didn't mind that so much. It's to be expected when the game's only like 40% finished, and I'm not going to fault the devs for that at current. There's a character creator too, which is a huge bonus in this sort of game, and the customization options, although not too in-depth at the current state of early access, are satisfying enough to hold me over until more are tossed in the future. That looks great. That looks like the Pokemon champion. This is just brimming with fucking energy. Couple the character customization with a good amount of game outfits, cosmetics, and hairstyles that you could buy and have a solid base to work with, it's definitely possible for you to stand out and have your own design further on. I do want to give praise to the fact that TemTem's conversations, dialogue, and general themes are definitely more adult oriented. What a great dialogue choice. This is the type of writing that Pokemon really could benefit from in the long run if they were to go out on a limb and have amazing things such as somewhat a breath of fresh air, and being able to tell people that you're going to do things like kick their ass is entirely awesome. They're straight up people that want to murder you and rob your corpse, and they tell you that to your face, with themes such as heaven and even their own version of hell existing. They don't want to sugarcoat the fact that there was also a massive freaking war that killed lots of people in the story, really tying together why things are the way they are currently in the live universe. Heck, at one point you actually see the fact that cities have armed guards with weapons meant for warfare, and that's great. It adds a whole dynamic of people fighting for survival in the world. I will say at current, however, that there are only 3 islands and environments that you have access to, each with a specific theme, the third one being Toxic and Crystal, for example, but all 3 of them are huge in comparison to some islands in a competitor's franchise, so I'm okay with that. There's a lot to explore too, and the backtracking you end up doing when you acquire certain gadgets, which basically are like cut TMs or whatever, it doesn't feel bad in the slightest, rewarding you heavily, especially when you pick up side quests. I think about 6 or so of my hours, my total hours, and in total I think are like 50, was just me running around picking up things and looking for things that I missed, and I enjoyed it, so take that as you will. Combat is pretty much identical to what you'd come to expect in a Poke-like game such as TemTem, and that's a phrase we're going to use from now on, Poke-like for any game like this. And it is just so close to what you get in Pokemon that I'm surprised they got away with it. All TemTem fights evolve into 2 Tems on each side, with each Tem on the field taking turns based on their speed stats and the priority of the move being used. The fact that every single fight is a doubles fight adds a massive dynamic of complexity underneath the surface level of combat, and I really like the amount of depth and complication that's possible. Having doubles all the time means that there's a lot more thought behind what you toss onto the field and what you're doing each and every turn, as you will most likely always have an enemy countering you, and it really endorses players using things such as buffers like Piglet Pick, or however you say his name, or debuffing the enemy team to give yourself an advantage. Toss in items that do things like completely change the types of attacks coming from your TemTem, like Toxic into water, and you're adding even more layers to it, but it never feels like too much, just entirely new compared to what I'm used to in Pokemon games. Type advantage and disadvantage is absolutely massive in TemTem, I'd say more so than in any other Poke-like game, and it really amps the difficulty up as you're playing through the story. In most Poke-like games, the player can just breeze through the campaign and trash on every opponent without even type matching by just using an overleveled monster and spamming their strongest attack, but TemTem heavily dislikes that and will kick your ass if you try. Matchups are not black and white. Tems based on elemental combinations will have different weaknesses and resistance than even other Tems that have the same combos, and it really requires you to know what you're going up against at the time being. Couple that with the fact that elemental matching can end up with you taking 4 times damage if you make a mistake, and it's easy to see how the difficulty curve exists. Currently, there are 12 different types in TemTem: neutral, fire, nature, water, electric, mental, earth, wind, crystal, digital, melee, and toxic, each with drastically different movesets, so there's really no shortage of matchups there. Now, another parallel to other Poke-likes is the fact that your entire purpose in the game is to go through and defeat dojo leaders. Like I said, dojo, not gym leaders, dojo leaders. It's totally different. Earning prestige and reputation as a TemTem master while going along. The dojo masters all have unique themes so far, and it felt decently put together. I really look forward to seeing what they add in the future, as a few of them even kicked my ass once or twice. Breeding exists in TemTem as you would expect, with players having the choice to breed 2 TemTems of the same type, not species, of the opposite gender, in hopes of getting a better stats child in the end.
Just gotta make them fuck. Yeah? You know what I'm saying, chat? Get some fucking going on. This is probably our best Canon.
Of course, you have items that you can buy that guarantee certain stats transfer over, so it's not complete RNG bullshit, and I've really enjoyed the dynamic of throwing my random TemTems into an orgy pit with the hopes of creating the ultimate life form. You of course have the min-maxing of single values and training values tossed in, extra stat lines that you can increase their food and breeding to make your Tems even stronger, and it's a pretty decent carrot on a stick that I think most players will end up chasing, allowing you to make the strongest possible TemTem of your choosing if you really want to put the time and effort towards that goal. If you don't care for doing all the nitty-gritty work of making Tems bang until they can't get it up anymore, you can of course just trade any and all items with other players, and this is pretty great, as everything in the entire game is tradable it seems. I love the fact that you can go and grind tons of money if you want to buy the best TemTems available. Currently I think that they're around 120,000 because of the recent breeding nerfs if you want a perfect statted one. But not having to make your brain hurt by simply buying something is just a great alternative. Currently, I think the best way to earn money is by capturing hundreds of birds in some random field and releasing them so hippies give you dollars for saving the planet, which I guess is alright. And oh yeah, I almost forgot. The best part of TemTem so far compared to other Poke-likes is the fact that you have the option of doing the entire story cooperatively with a friend. This blew my mind and so far has worked great in the times that I've done it. It's just one of those things that I've always wanted to do in a Poke-like game like this. Each player will control one of the two Tems on your team, and you can coordinate and use items together, with strategy discussion being a thing, and you being able to pull from both pools of player Tems. Even if it does serve to slow down the combat ever so slightly, I can't complain. I've had a lot of fun just seeing and doing everything with a buddy, and it's just been great. In the end, though, overall, I definitely enjoyed and even still enjoy TemTem in the early access phase of its development and could totally support it. To the people who are angry that there's a near carbon copy of Pokemon with minor improvements, tweaks, and quality of life changes, I say this to you, don't be. Let's be honest, Sword and Shield were not exactly the best received games, and to a lot of fans, they were entirely big letdowns in their own rights. It's obvious that Game Freak and Nintendo have become somewhat complacent on their seats at the top, and competition of this sort isn't going to be a bad thing to the consumer. It's a genuinely good game in the MMO setting and a battler type we've always wanted, and I hope that it continues to be popular, possibly maybe even forcing the Pokemon license to evolve and adapt, to change itself so that it doesn't continue to be stagnant. I think there's room for multiple games of this type to be on the market. I definitely believe that TemTem is doing nobody any harm, and it's clear the developers are really pouring their passion into it, so I ask you to give it a chance. Don't hate on it because it's a carbon copy of Pokemon in some regard. If we all went around hating on everything that was similar, we'd end up never improving. And if you're mad at that, then you should be mad at, I don't know, things that copy Dark Souls too. Go out and hate Sekiro, Code Vein, Neo, Ashen, Necropolis, and so on and so forth. It's just a stupid reason to hate. And TemTem's actually good. So, I suggest you check it out. In the current state of TemTem Early Access, if I give it credit for being Early Access and only reviewing the content that's there for the price, I can easily give it an 8 out of 10. And I'm entirely hopeful that when I swing back around next year for full release to review it, I'll be able to score it even higher. I love what it has so far, and it was a breath of fresh air to start over from Generation 1 in a game like this, and I highly anticipate all the new content in the future. That's going to be it for this rapid fire preview. Yeah, I still like that. If you like to do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, ring the bell to get notifications on new videos in the future. Oh yeah, and if you like the rapid fire reviews or would like to see when I'm doing them live on Twitch, you can head over to my Twitter at AJSA Delrith and give me a follow. I'd appreciate it. Until the next video, this is Delrith, and I'll be seeing you.